They tell us that the new coal-fired power plants are not like coal-fired power plants anymore. They tell us they now have clean coal, which takes the pollution out of the air and puts it in a sludge pond. They tell us that they will be able to burn over 5,000 tons of coal a day per plant without using the latest technology, with no consequences. And they tell us that since the cost of building coal gasification is 20% higher, it's just not practical yet. Who are they? We will have a hard time knowing who these people are, because the Energy Policy Act of 2003 allows power companies to act like Enron and set up multiple subsidiaries to blur their financial reports. What we do know is that 2 Peabody Coal executives were named to President Bush's Energy Advisory Team after coal companies gave $900,000 to Republican coffers. We also know that 4 days after Vice President Dick Cheney announced the administration's new energy plan, Peabody, a privately held company for over 120 years, went public and sold stock for $420 million, $60 million more than expected. Peabody Group is the largest coal company on the planet, and they presently lease almost a third of the mines in the Powder River Basin, where the Ely power plants will get their coal. You may not be familiar with Peabody's history of coal mining on the Navajo Reservation, but the Navajo and Hopi people will never forget. They have witnessed their water wells drained, their springs have dried out, and their forests are dying. Peabody Coal took 4,000 acre-feet per year. This was only half of what just one of the 4 Ely coal-fired power plants will take. Peabody supplied the Navajo's coal to the Mojave Power Plant in Laughlin, which was part owned by Nevada Power, now a subsidiary of Sierra Pacific Resources. The intriguing aspect of these relationships are financial deals with a big New York bank, Lehman Brothers. Nevada Power and Sierra Pacific have both been dealing with Lehman Brothers. Recently, Lehman Brothers loaned Sierra Pacific Resources $335 million in unsecured notes. And yes, this is the same Lehman Brothers that is the largest investor in Peabody Energy Company. In case you didn't know, Lehman Brothers does not have the best reputation on Wall Street. They were recently charged with violations of the 1933 Securities Act and agreed to pay $222.5 million to settle a class action lawsuit brought by misled investors of Enron. Part of the reason Sierra Pacific and LS Power want to build coal-fired power plants near Ely is because the Mojave Generating Station, a coal-fired power plant in Laughlin, was shut down. And why was it forced to shut down? Because it was one of the dirtiest coal-fired power plants in the country, and the owners, including Nevada Power, would not install the pollution control equipment required, even though they had promised to 6 years earlier. The plant now sits idle. Its toxic sludge sits nearby, waiting for the day the containment barriers break, and its toxic contents leak into the Colorado River. Ely is next, but Ely isn't the only place environmentally at risk. Those of us living in Nevada haven't thought much about the ranches in Wyoming that now have mines on them. The ranchers there didn't have the mineral rights to their property. Now, their ranches will never be the same. We need to pay attention to their predicament. The environmental destruction there is an indicator of the attitudes of this industry and our economic system. By law, a corporation has to maximize its profits for its shareholders. But where are the laws that say its customers or community have to be considered? Where are the institutions that were supposed to protect us? Maybe the Department of Interior's own Inspector General, Earl Devaney, can explain. He recently testified that, short of a crime, anything goes at the highest levels of the Department of Interior. And things could get worse. There already has been an effort in Congress to set up a coal monopoly in the Powder River Basin. Back in 2003, an amendment was offered in the House of Representatives to the Energy Security Act of 2003 that only failed by 4 votes. H.R. 6 would have in the words of Ranking Democrat Representative Nick Randall. These provisions would allow coal producers with federal leases to seize unlimited additional federal coal lands without competitive bidding and be relieved of paying royalties owed to the American taxpayer. The net effect of these provisions would be the creation of a federal coal-producing monopoly in the Powder River Basin. So, with the possibility of astronomically rising coal prices, why aren't the utility companies worried about hikes in the price of coal? Because ultimately, they won't have to pay them. The ratepayers will. And more insidiously, increases in fuel expenses are actually a good excuse for the utility companies to raise their rates. Here's a hypothetical example. Let's say a unit of some fuel costs $1. For the sake of ease of calculations, let's say that that dollar's worth of fuel results in $2 worth of electricity. Obviously, these aren't real numbers, but this example is to show you why the power companies may want the price of fuel to rise. Let's say the price of this fuel goes up by 10%, 10 cents per unit. The power company would be thus justified in raising their electricity rates too. Let's say they raised their prices by 10% also. But 10% of $2 is 20 cents. In this example, for every 10 cents fuel prices rise, the power company gets an additional 10 cents of profit. This could add up to hundreds of millions of dollars when you're selling billions of dollars of electricity. Of course, in the real world, things aren't this simple. But don't be surprised if this extra profit potential might be the hidden reason power companies aren't all that interested in free fuel for their power generation. One other thing, your tax dollars are helping the power companies to build these coal-fired power plants. Between 1950 and 1997, the coal industry received more than $70 billion in federal subsidies, or nearly $1.5 billion a year. In 2005, Congress approved an additional $7.8 billion for coal. Your tax money is going to subsidize the fossil fuel industry, while alternative energy inventors with better ideas are systematically excluded. Our tax money is being spent to perpetuate an antiquated, polluting, and price-gouging energy system. And that's just how old money wants it. So, just how bad does our situation have to get before Americans act? Does our environment have to be worse than China's before we decide that we're environmentalists? You can wait. But what's the point in being an environmentalist after our environment has collapsed? Many scientists are now saying that we have to act on global warming within the next 10 years, or the Earth won't be able to heal itself. And when they say we have to act, they mean you. We are the customers. We have the influence if we choose to use it. If you are willing to commit to safe and sustainable power, let the utility companies know. Write them. They need to know how many customers they might lose if they commit to the construction of unsafe and unsustainable power. If enough of us are willing to do what it takes, even to build our own power generators if necessary, the utility companies cannot ignore us. We have better options.